Today's reflection will be the second part of our series to restore and to elevate. Last week, we reflected on the low moments, the place from which we most need elevation. This week, I want to talk about the moments of formation in a talk I'm going to title Going Underground. Now, I'll start with the question, do you ever find yourself just needing to withdraw for a moment, to step aside or away? I look at the gram and I see so many people who are ready to help with that moment with those beautiful drone views of lush green vistas and crystal clear waters. Get away, there is an industry for that. But those grammable moments are not everywhere and not all the time, and they're not always available to our schedules nor to our budgets. And is that a statement or an understatement, church? Yet and still, we sometimes, if not often, need to draw away for a moment. And if that becomes dependent on our schedules, which in many ways so many of us don't exactly control, and if it depends on our budgets, which for most cannot afford regular access to remote vistas and waters, and especially if we think our moments away need to be grammable, then we'll find ourselves in trouble. But I want you to know, if you didn't already, that time away is biblical. Jesus would often take a moment just to get to the other side. That's the biblical phrase. And when we say that, what we're saying is he would be on the one side of the Sea of Galilee working real hard to save people and to heal them. And then he'd say, wait a minute, I need a moment. And he'd get in a boat, off into the confusion of his peeps, and he would go and he would have some time to himself. And I don't know that Jesus was an introvert, and I wouldn't claim that, and I don't even think that was true, but he for sure had some moments of introversion, turning in to himself. And I'd submit to you that this is a crucial spiritual discipline, your introvert moment, when you draw to the other side, Selah. Now, I'm a pretty extreme extrovert. I wither without having some external energy. I will go in a cafe or a restaurant just so that I can hear other humans. Most of the time, I need noise to think. It's part of why living in New York City is so perfect for me. But every now and then, I go in what my girlfriends call my cave. I burrow. I turn off my phone. I shut down the noise. I just need to be left alone. And I try to do this in a home with other living humans who have needs, and sometimes that just doesn't work. So I need to go somewhere else. And I'd love to tell you about a time when I went to the other side, leaving the house to burrow, and I want to tell you about what happened there. I was serving a church, not this one, but I was serving a church near a gorgeous retreat center in Connecticut that was run by an order of nuns, and I wish I could tell you which. And this retreat center ran silent retreats. Now, at this point in my life, you could describe torture in a few ways to me. Physical was the obvious kind, but the other kind of torture that would immediately come to mind for this extrovert, you guessed it, a silent retreat. But I knew that I needed something. Something had to give. The noise I had loved had grown too loud. I stumbled from noisy thing to noisy thing so much that I couldn't hear anymore. I couldn't hear the people around me even. I couldn't hear much from God either. And I tried to burrow, but my living situation at the time didn't really allow for it. And this is back in my single days. I couldn't pull it off. And the problem with knowing that you need to burrow and not being able to do it is that your ability to cope in that time then begins to disintegrate. Because the burrowing is part of the coping and you need it. And when you can't do it, things begin to destabilize. Now, Jesus went to the other side to pray. And finally, someone convinced me to join her on a dreaded silent retreat, reminding me that Jesus went to the other side to pray. And I was at my wit's end, so I grudgingly agreed. But I brought snacks, I brought some podcasts along, and lots of music, and every way I could possibly resist that silence. I was going to be a rebel silent retreater. And I wish I could tell you that as soon as I stepped foot on the lush grounds of that center, and as soon as I put my duffel bag down on that humble twin mattress, and as soon as I looked out the window and smelled the freshly cut grass and beheld the perfectly tended gardens and the breaking waves on the cliffs below, that something in me started to get silent retreat. But I didn't. In fact, the silence felt loud and oppressive. But you know what? God told me to give it time, to give it a minute. So I took a bath. I went for a swim. I followed the instructions and didn't talk. And in the silence, you know what happened? Lots of things started to speak. My body was first. It fought the silence initially because it didn't know what to do with it. It wanted to keep fighting like you always inherently do walking these streets, like if you live in New York, changing my posture from, just that sense of alertness we have, changing it from that to silence required a softening. And in the silence, my body wondered, is it safe to talk now? Is she, meaning am I, willing to listen? And then my mind was next. And what I realized is that, of course, my mind speaks to me all of the time. But that's only a certain part of my mind. The day-to-day mind and I are very well acquainted, but the soft part, the quiet part, the part that needs permission to say things, it only started to ask, may I go now? In the silence. And it had things to say, like, can we go ahead and talk about this thing that you've boxed in your mind over here? Can we open the box? Can we surround it with love and with light? Can we hand it over to God? Because this quiet part of my mind said to me, I'm tired of sitting on this box and trying to hold down the lid. It takes so much out of me, and that means out of you. And in the silence, you know what? We can open it together. And we know just what to do to bring healing. Can we just go ahead and do it? And then, after all that work, in the silence, guess what? I was exhausted. Body spoke back up in the silence and said, okay, it's time for the nap ministry, which asserted itself often on this retreat. And finally, you might be surprised how long it took before I was ready for it. Then, after all that, after listening to the voices that were looking for permission to speak, after the nap even, God had things to say. But first, I had that homework. God told me to open up the little Bible that I'd brought and turn to the 139th Psalm. Write it on your heart, God said. And that was my assignment. So yes, I then memorized this, which is one of the longest Psalms, right there in silent retreat by the very loud rolling seas. And what I came to understand was that memorizing the psalm in that setting on the other side was a time actually to practice the psalm, to live it. Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. Really? Okay, God, okay, let's search. Let me know me better. Let me know me the way you know me. And then I realized that's what the silence had done in those voices that finally spoke, that finally had a chance to reach me and teach me and heal me. That was God's doing. That was God searching and knowing me and scanning my body and my mind and my soul so that I could be seen and known to myself and to heal myself with God's help. You know my sitting down and my rising up, my thoughts you have discerned from far away. God sees it all. I don't even need to say it out loud, though I can if I want to. God already knew. Even before a word is on my tongue, oh God, you know it completely. The good words and the words I want to take back, God, you know those. And when God already knows, then you know what? We can cut out the chit chat. When God already knows, then we can get straight to the correction and then the healing. Selah. Praise be. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, and for darkness is as light to you. That's the psalm. And I can't run from the Lord, and I don't need to. I could take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, and even there God's hand will lead me, and in the silence on the other side, I took the risk to let God teach me, to show me the limitness of God's habitation. Horizons demonstrate that masterfully. And my invitation to you is this: to take the time when you need to burrow, to retreat to the other side. It doesn't have to cost you a dime or more than the cost of a subway fare, if you must. But find your space for silence, maybe even especially, if that sounds impossible or like the worst thing in the world, like it did to me. If you follow Jesus, you follow what he did. Go on to the other side. Let God teach you. Bring the 139th Psalm, if nothing else, and let the silent healers within you waiting to do their work, let them speak. In the silence, let God form you by hand. There is nothing better, I promise you. Selah. Thank you so much for joining us for this element of worship. We are so grateful that you have entrusted the park with this moment to hear music, to listen to the Word of God, whatever it may be. And we just ask for your support. The park only functions with the generous donations of people like you. And 100% of your donation goes to the incredible ministries of this church, which give and give and give again. Thank you for the ways that you give in advance and for all that you might be ready to give in the future. God bless you, and amen.